Hey, ladies and gentlemen, the Podfather here. Brandon cuts in and out at some point in time during the recording, and also there was some slight background noise, but it's still a great listen. We discussed the Benoit episode of Dark Side of the Ring, Rollins' amazing promo from Monday Night Raw, and so much more. You don't want to miss it. Here's the latest episode of the BC.
Bulletcast for life. Get up! This is a revolution! This is our time to rise! Look deep within your mind.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know the name, you know the voice, you know exactly why I'm here. Just in case if you don't, I am a 24-year-old piece of gold, the messiah of the microphone, and the greatest sports recreational podcast in the world today, the Podfather. And ladies and gentlemen, during this difficult time, as we find out more what's going on with COVID-19, coronavirus, sit back, relax, and let us entertain you for the duration of this episode. He's always on the line. He's my tag team partner, the Jim to my J, the Tully to my R, and the Stevie Ray to my Booker T. Ladies and gentlemen, host of the award-winning Under the Radar, host and creator of Curveballs and Chair Shots, first ever Bulletcast champion, the Canadian Destroyer, BT, Brandon Tan Guma. Brandon, week 2 of the quarantine. How you feeling?
You know, Phillip, I ain't doing so hot today because my first love, baseball, should have been opening day today. Honestly, I should be at the Oakland Coliseum, my home away from home, but unfortunately it's not the case. Just like everything else in the world, except for pro wrestling, as of now. Baseball has been postponed, and it's a sad day. Sad day for me.
Yeah, I know. I got a Twitter notification about that. MLB fans are spending opening day at home. It's that's unfortunate, man. I'm sorry to hear that. I really am. But we have a lot of wrestling to talk about as the wrestling world continues to fight through this COVID-19 crisis as they keep carrying on and delivering us content. So here we go. We'll start with the SmackDown recap as always. Gronk makes his, I guess, official WWE debut since now he's with the company. Mojo Rawley and Michael Cole introduce him on SmackDown in the Performance Center. And I guess he's still running with the LMFAO, Jersey Shore, the situation gimmick from like the early 2010s. I guess, man. Okay, sure. You know, Baron Corbin comes out there, and Elias plays a song to Corbin, and then I guess Mojo gets down on all fours and Gronk pushes Corbin over. Sure. Okay. Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, Gronk is definitely a different character. He's one of the greatest football players of all time, maybe the greatest tight end of all time, but he is definitely a character. He's kind of love him or hate him. I like him. He's cool. He can get a little over the top at times. And shout out to Cultaholic. They made this assumption, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. If wrestlers were Pokemon, Gronk is like the evolved version of Mojo Rawley. He's just bigger, stronger, faster, and kind of more loud and obnoxious.
That's a great analogy by Cultaholic. Yeah, man. I have you seen the footage of him laughing to himself about 69?
Nice.
Just, oh my God, Gronk. I don't know. I don't get it. I guess people like it. Sure. He's just I guess he's forever the frat boy, eh?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Gronk at like the football shows and stuff like that. He's good when he's like reined in. He's a smart guy, but then I think this kind of happens a lot when the celebrities get into WWE. They kind of don't take it super seriously, so they kind of just do whatever they want. And this is kind of I think this is like the worst Gronk you can see because he is just so over the top and crazy. But I mean, if that's what WWE wants from him, then they're getting it. They're getting it.
Ooh. Bulletcast hotline? No? Maybe so?
Yeah, because someone texted me, a.k.a. you.
Oh. I would never do that. Never. Alright, Drew Gulak and Daniel Bryan defeat the Artist Collective of Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro. It happened.
Yes, it did happen. But the only good thing is that they are teasing Daniel Bryan versus Sami Zayn for the IC title. Yes, please, and thank you.
Yeah, that'll make this WrestleMania somewhat enjoyable. I don't know. Alright, the SmackDown Women's Championship has been It's going to be in a six-pack challenge at WrestleMania. Paige was on the screen via satellite. Sasha Banks, the attire she wore. Yeah, so some of the women that will be involved are Sasha Banks, Tamina, Lacey Evans, Bailey, of course. I forgot the rest. Naomi, is she in there? Can we say she's in there?
Bailey, Sasha Banks, Lacey Evans, Naomi. Dana Brooke was supposed to be in there, but we're going to talk about her in a little bit.
Tamina?
And Tamina, yes, the return of Tamina.
Oh, God, love Tamina. Love her to death.
Very underrated, according to you.
Oh, absolutely, dude. Underrated. Gorgeous, yes. Underrated and gorgeous, you know? Deserves a push.
Sonya Deville, very underrated.
Sonya Deville is very underrated. A lot of people are underrated, you know? Anyway, what are your thoughts on this six-pack women's championship challenge?
It's just like a regular WrestleMania match. You'll get everybody on the card. Rumor and innuendo is that this was probably supposed to be just Sasha and Bailey in a one-on-one match, but because of the circumstances, they couldn't really build the proper story they want, which I can understand. So maybe they're just kind of waiting this out, and maybe we get the Bailey Banks blow-off at SummerSlam. But I mean, it is what it is. Especially since they're not going to have these big old battle royals. I think they're trying to find as many different ways to get as many people on the card as they want. But in these times, maybe that's not the best idea, especially with Dana Brooke, who is not going to be there, and maybe if one person can on the entire company, just like it did the NBA.
That's very true. All right, let's go to the Universal Championship contract signing. Roman Reigns says, "I'm looking at what do you say? A little biatch pit bull holding my championship that he never earned."
Bulldog,
okay.
Because he went to Georgia and they're the Bulldogs.
Okay, then
and he's from Georgia Tech, so all this Georgia rah rah.
Okay, that'll make sense. Anyway, it was just Roman talking trash about he's a part timer. Goldberg says Oh, they brought up the tweet about Roman and dissing Goldberg headbutting steel doors, and Goldberg's like, "I've been doing that all over the world for years." I'm like, "Oh, okay." It happened.
It did happen. It was short and sweet. Goldberg barely said anything. He maybe said like 2 sentences, which is kind of what you want from Goldberg. I thought this was a step up from what they did 2 weeks ago, and I didn't really like what they did with Roman Reigns in that segment, but this one was good. I mean, it's kind of hard to really judge because there's no crowd. I think maybe the crowd would be more in favor of Goldberg, but this is Vince McMahon's, dream come true. He gets to book Roman Reigns with nobody booing him, and there you go. He can just do whatever he wants with the big dog.
Yeah. Everything was okay until Goldberg won the Universal Championship. I'm going to just say that. The world was okay. The world was fine. That's all I'm going to say. At least SmackDown, they took my advice and they showed Bray Wyatt versus John Cena from WrestleMania 30.
Yeah, I mean, the match is okay. We saw it again on ESPN, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I mean, with WWE, we're definitely seeing these matches be replayed. Raw, we did get a lot more wrestling than we normally do, which maybe they're kind of running out of ideas and don't want to put too much replay content on the show, because maybe with the Orlando mayor has basically issued a complete shutdown of the city, which means who knows how long they have stuff in the can. So maybe WWE isn't going to be doing things at the Performance Center or doing any live programming or any original programming at all.
They'll think of something. They will think of something. All right, outside of the ring, Rey Mysterio and Dana Brooke are apparently under quarantine because they may have been exposed to the virus or may have the virus. So the original plan, I guess, was for Rey Mysterio and Andrade to have a singles match at WrestleMania for the United States Championship. That has completely been scrapped. Now it's Andrade and Angel Garza going up against the Street Profits for the tag titles. As we'd mentioned, Dana Brooke was supposed to be in the six-pack women's championship match for the SmackDown women's title. That's been scrapped. She's no longer in that title match. We don't know who her replacement will be. But Brandon, you broke this on Under the Radar. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's Rey Mysterio and Dana Brooke. we don't exactly know to what extent it is, if it's them just being cautious, if it's them being exposed to the virus, or even having some symptoms. Nothing's really out there quite yet. My sources, aka Wade Keller, talked about on his hotline that he has learned that somebody else has been in quarantine. They told him who it was. He didn't reveal it because it hasn't been public yet. So some breaking news on the Bulletcast here that there is another person in quarantine in the company. I don't know if it's a wrestler, if it's a staff member or whatever, but just kind of keep an eye out for that. Paige, apparently she wasn't at SmackDown Live because she didn't feel comfortable traveling, which is totally understandable. Corey Graves and Carmella haven't been there, and they're not in quarantine, but they just don't want to be out, and they're doing self-isolation. So this is definitely something that's been going around, and even in AEW, it was a very bare bones crew, even less than what they had the week before, and a lot less older people, which is definitely the right decision. We're seeing more and more shows get canceled for AEW. We're coming very, very close, Phillip, to Double or Nothing being canceled. They canceled every Dynamite up until May 13th, which will be the week before Double or Nothing. I think AEW is looking to, wait it out, and they're going to cancel it or postpone it maybe not the very last second, but I think they have a deadline by mid-April to make a decision on what's going down.
Yeah, man, I hope Double or Nothing doesn't get canceled, but then again, I think they will do a comp. I think they'll do that for, for people who have paid for Double or Nothing, and if the event does get canceled, I really hope that's not the case. But, so, do we know who was under quarantine, the other employee?
I just told you. They didn't reveal it. Wade Keller knows who it is, but he didn't say who it was because it hasn't been public yet. So maybe it'll come out in the coming days that somebody else is in quarantine, but just letting you guys know that somebody else is in quarantine, but just like Mysterio and Brooke, we don't exactly know what that means, if they're showing symptoms, been exposed, or whatever.
Oh my god. Alright, well, hopefully that person gets better very, very soon. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we have to talk about a very, very serious topic here. Dark Side of the Ring Season 2 premiered a few days ago. The first episode was the Chris Benoit episodes, and so what they did, it was on Vice's YouTube channel. They did basically Benoit and Eddie Guerrero in the first one, and then the second one was just Chris Benoit, the double homicide, suicide, and you really learned some graphic details, stuff I didn't even know about what went down when Benoit was committing these murders. Brandon, have you seen it, and what are your thoughts?
Yep, I saw it yesterday night because I knew we were going to talk about it, so I had to get it, and I quite enjoyed it. It was a double episode, so basically the first episode, if you watch it on YouTube, it doesn't really talk anything about the murders. They kind of lead up to the pay-per-view, and then they say that he's dead. And then the second part is definitely when they get into all the details of what happened, or what they speculate what happened. And I mean, I have looked at a lot of stuff about the Chris Benoit murders. I don't say I know everything, but I knew a lot of stuff going into this, and I did learn some some new details, especially kind of the personal aspect of things, especially with the Benoit family, having his other child there, and Nancy's sister. Chavito and Chris Jericho were the two main guys talking about the relationship, because they're being very close with both him and Eddie Guerrero. And yeah, I mean, he's kind of said it. There's a lot of graphic details in what happened. Very interesting. Definitely, I would recommend it, whether you know a little bit or a lot about the Chris Benoit murder.
Yeah, man, it was for anybody, the directors and makers of Dark Side of the Ring, they were just on Jericho's podcast. Go listen to that. That's great. They talk about how this has been in the works for like 3 years, this specific episode, and how they got Chavo and how they got Jericho on board. That stuff's good. But I mean, he killed his son and then left a Bible by his bed, and then there was a knife under his bed, and then he killed Nancy and and I guess he wrapped her up in a blanket and left a Bible by her, and they were dead for a couple days before he actually killed himself. It's just, it's very, very hard to even fathom that this happened. I mean, it's been 13 years, but you still can't believe any of this happened. Now, I'm gonna read to you a couple messages that we have. Florido, former guest on the BC, he wrote in and he said, Dark Side of the Ring does a great job of telling Chris Benoit's story from many various perspectives, whether it was how his best friend Eddie Guerrero's death negatively impacted his life, or how CTE was changing his behaviors. Vice's documentary gives us an idea of which possibly factored into Benoit's unforgivable actions. Unfortunately, as Chris Jericho said in part 2, there's still the one question we may never know the answer to: why Chris Benoit did it. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, the Chris Benoit, why he did it, I've always just kind of chalked it up of just being a cocktail of just, CTE, steroids, grief from Eddie. They talked about how there was some abuse with Nancy, but they didn't go too deep into it. The sister didn't really want to go too deep into that, which I completely understand. So it was just, I don't want to say perfect, but it was just everything just kind of came together at the right moment, and they were talking about that Nancy and Chris kind of broke up and they got back together, and it's just kind of sad, especially when the sister talks about maybe I should never picked up that phone and let Nancy talk to Chris, and maybe this whole thing would have never happened.
Yeah, that's hard too. And then his son David, who's still alive, it was watching him talk about this stuff, I think this and the Chris Van Vliet interview are the only times he's ever actually publicly discussed this stuff, and it's kind of a shame. Like, he's kind of blackballed by the wrestling industry because of what his father did, and I mean, look, you can't blame the kid. He had nothing to do with it. He wasn't there, you know what I mean? I mean, like, does he look absolutely identical to his father? Yes, of course. That's his dad. They have strong genes. I mean, I saw him at StarCast, and I'm like, oh my god. Like, he just looked like Chris so much, But there's this other one that I want to read, and this is actually kind of controversial one. So Robert Walker writes in, and he says, the Dark Side of the Ring Benoit episode was very interesting, but I have heard Phillip defend Benoit and Barry Hogan. What's his take now after watching this documentary? So, here it is. I've never just defended Benoit. Let's get that straight now. I'm not glorifying a murderer. I guess that's the most appropriate way to put this. I look at it like this. The things that Chris Benoit did are absolutely heinous and unforgivable. I really do try to focus on the in-ring aspect of his life, because, I mean, for 39 years, he wasn't a monster. That weekend, he lost it somewhat. I mean, he was still conscious of what he was doing. They said that by looking up what he was looking at on the computer. So he was somewhat conscious of what he was doing. But my whole point is, I look at the in-ring aspect of Chris Benoit, one of the best that's ever done it. And then the whole thing with Hogan. Look, guys, like I said, if Hogan dies today, we're doing an emergency podcast about the career of Hulk Hogan. My whole thing is, Hogan hasn't really truly apologized for the things that he said, okay? Me as an African American male, I just can't let that go. Or you don't even have to be African American to let go what Hogan said. He said some very disgusting things. What Chris Benoit did was absolutely worse. That's just where the cookie crumbles, if you will. Hogan, the career, absolutely phenomenal. Terry Bollea, the man, I'm sorry, I'm not going to mess with it. The in-ring aspect of Chris Benoit's career, unbelievable. But there's that asterisk, that forever on his career, because of what he did in the course of 3 days. What he did in the course of those 3 days ruined his legacy, damn near almost ruined the business, as what Jericho said, But it's an utter shame, because him and Eddie, they died for their craft. In a way, their deaths made the industry better. We get the wellness policy in WWE, where if you pop Adderall without a prescription, you're suspended for 30 days. That's how strict the health and wellness policy got. And then we learn all these things about CTE, even further because of the autopsy and the scans of Benoit's brain. So a lot of positives came out of this unbelievable tragedy. That's my long spiel take on that. Brandon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of talked about it multiple times on the podcast before. I think we've had some email questions about it, and I've always been on the stance of what he did was just horrific, and WWE has every right to just completely blackball him and never talk about him ever again. It's very awkward, especially when you do reruns of WrestleMania 20 when him and Eddie are out there at the very end hugging and crying and confetti's falling down. But, people say that, he should be in the Hall of Fame because of what he did in the ring. But, the WWE Hall of Fame is a spectacle, and it's a show, and they brought up the fact at the end that Nancy should be in the Hall of Fame, and I definitely agree with that. Like, Nancy Benoit, woman, she did a lot of stuff in the business, and I think she should be recognized and be in the WWE Hall of Fame. I don't know what the relationship... the sister talked about how she's never really heard or talked to anybody really in WWE since that incident happened. And, it's very similar to Owen Hart and his family that they don't really want anything to do with WWE, so that aspect is kind of sad. But when it comes to Chris Benoit and his legacy, like, when I was watching the first part of the documentary, they were showing some New Japan stuff. I was like, I think I might want to fire up New Japan World and watch some Pegasus Kid versus Lionheart or Black Tiger or whatever. And I was like, I can still watch it, but for me, I never go out of my way to watch a Chris Benoit match. Like, if I'm seeing WCW, ECW, WWE, if his match pops up, like, I can watch it, but I can never forget about what he did. And when it comes to WWE Hall of Fame, don't put him in. You can respect what he did in the ring when it happened, but I'm never going to ever give him accolades and say he was the best ever because of what he did. Like, OJ, one of the best running backs of all time.
That's a great point. That's where I was going to go with this too. Me and my roommate had this conversation last night. Benoit, there's the asterisks on his career because of what he did. O.J. Simpson, like, what position did he play? What did you just say?
He was one of the greatest running backs of all time. He actually made it to the NFL 100 team. Wasn't at the Super Bowl though, so.
Yeah, so there you go. One of the best running backs of all time. But there's that asterisk on his career. Like, he even branched out into entertainment and acting. There's this asterisk on his career because of the trial. That's just how it is. You can be an amazing performer, an amazing athlete, but there are these asterisks on your career and your legacy.
And the thing with OJ, happened so much after his career. Like, Chris Benoit, he was aging and he probably wasn't going to be wrestling for much longer, but this still happened while he was an active competitor. And it's very hard to, like, take that away from... OJ, I don't watch OJ highlights or anything, but I have a little bit... I can separate it a little bit more just because it was so far removed, not taking anything away. What he allegedly did, he was still technically convicted in a civil trial of being responsible for the murders, but... Yeah,
it was about a decade gap, right?
Yeah, about. Something like that.
Yeah, David said that Chris was planning on retiring within that year of what happened. So, I don't know, man. And it goes again with the diving headbutt, Harley Race invented the move, and he told Dynamite Kid, hey, this is going to mess you up when you're older. Dynamite Kid does it, and he ends up in a wheelchair. And then Benoit does it, and look what happened. That and the unprotected chair shots to the head. It's just... Yeah, it's just a very convoluted story. I was hoping that...
That's why I'm so happy that my boy Dana Bryan doesn't do the Chris Benoit Memorial Diving Headbutt, as I call it. Because it's just... all the wrestlers who have done that move have not been very healthy after that.
Dude, that's another thing. Benoit would get brought up a lot when Daniel was really getting hot, going for the title. He would do the suicide dive, the diving headbutt, and the label lock, the yes lock, which... It's the crossface, except the arm is bent back. But still, I'm like, oh my god, this is Benoit Part 2. That's what people were basically saying, But it's just Chris Benoit. That's always going to be a very touchy subject on anyone. And yeah, it's...
But next week, Phillip, New Jack is going to be on. It's going to be so crazy, and it's going to be so amazing. New Jack released his book, and I listened to a podcast about it. If you have never know about the career and life of New Jack, it is insane, and I definitely would recommend you watching this one.
Yeah, absolutely. New Jack follows us on Instagram, and he follows me on my personal Instagram as well. New Jack, friend of the show, friend of mine. Can't wait.
Yes, never say anything bad about New Jack, especially if you watch that documentary.
Man, have you seen some of his shoot interviews where he talks about his relations with Terry Runnels? Those are those are very interesting.
I'm never going to say anything bad ever about New Jack.
No, no, man. I mean, Terry Runnels liked to be bled on during intercourse. That's all I will say. Yeah. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on. Scott Dawson is apparently done with WWE. His contract has officially expired. Dash Wilder still has about a month and a half or a month left on his contract before it actually expires. So the Revival looks like they're going to be officially done with WWE, and let's see if Shatter Machine or FTR pops up in AEW.
We've been waiting for this day for such a long time with all the trademarks and them being... was the last time they've been on television was when we were at that SmackDown show in San Jose, Phillip?
Yes, dude. So we saw the Revival's final WWE appearance live. That's how special we are, bro.
And then I think I saw Luke Harper's final match at Hell in a Cell, so, I'm kind of like the kiss of death for wrestlers in WWE going to AEW.
Oh, wow. There you go. There you go. Were you, did you happen to make an appearance to Matt Hardy's final WWE appearance?
I do not think so.
Okay,
But
okay.
I'll take 2 out of 3.
Just making sure, just making sure. All right, so what, like, let's say they don't go to AEW, where else do you think they would go?
They could do the rounds around the indie scene. I think I would really like to see them in New Japan. I think the New Japan heavyweight tag division is a little stale at the moment, so if they come in, I would assume they'd have to be heels, just kind of being some gaijin, white heels. I mean, I would love to see the Revival or whatever they're going to be called in the indie world to wrestle in New Japan, wrestle a tour, just kind of sign with them. I think New Japan would be my ideal scenario if they don't go to AEW.
Yes. All right, Braun Strowman buried indie talent. Indie talent, they rely on bookings to make their living, and since there's no wrestling at the moment, except for WWE, a lot of them have taken to Twitter and Instagram and social media and like, hey, buy my shirt, so-and-so. And Braun took to his Instagram, which the post has since been deleted, but your boy has it here. And he says, here we go with more of the somebody pay for my bills stuff. If you can't afford to pay your bills, maybe you should change professions. That's why I quit strongman. I loved it, but I couldn't afford to live, so instead of making a GoFundMe or Patreon wanting someone else to take care of me, I went out and worked harder than I've ever done in my life to get to where I am. What happened to being accountable for your own actions? Oh, Braun. Why would you say such a thing? Brandon, you have any thoughts?
This is such a stupid, privileged take to have. I mean, it's not that the profession that they're doing doesn't pay enough, it's that the profession has just stopped altogether. If, let's just take it back to the strongman, if he was doing strongman events and then just all of a sudden out of nowhere that's his only source of income, and there's no more strongman events because of a virus, just shuts everything down, and you've been living paycheck to paycheck expecting this amount of money to come in every single month, and then all of a sudden that doesn't happen, so then you have to start pushing your t-shirts, your 8x10s, and all this other forms of merchandise. And yeah, I mean, Braun, I don't know his entire career, but I would assume he's never wrestled on the indie scene and hasn't really lived that lifestyle. But it was so stupid of him to say that, and people all over the indie scene are just going after him. Even Evil Uno, which is an interesting matchup. I would like to see that one day, but yeah, just a stupid take by Braun, and especially during what everybody's going through, both in the wrestling world and in the real world, just saying something like that is just so idiotic.
The real world? Is The Miz on the real world?
Maybe.
No? Did you ever watch the real world, Brandon?
I think I watched I don't remember when the last real world season was, but I think I watched maybe the last one or second to last one. I think they're in Seattle or something. I didn't watch the Miz's one, but I've watched a few seasons of the real world.
Yeah, the only real world season I watched in full was the real world Skeletons. I think they were Chicago or something. I don't know.
I think that's the one I watched.
Oh yeah, where they would bring back somebody from their past and something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was very entertaining television, man. I'm shocked they didn't do a like how the cast gets back together after the season's over to kind of reflect. They didn't do one of those, and I'm kind of sad. Anyway, moving on. Brandon, you must be very excited. Total Bellas returns next week, April 2nd of 2020.
Oh yeah, so excited, just can't hide it. Ms. and Mrs. is no more, but we're gonna get some Total Bellas, damn it. I think they moved it up because of the coronavirus, so excited to see that. Stay tuned on Under the Radar for your Total Bellas recap, everybody.
Absolutely. Also, last up on Outside of the Ring, I know we've been going kind of long. We're going to speed up, ladies and gentlemen. Tama Tonga welcomes a new baby girl. Congratulations, he is now a father. Brandon, Mania Madness, bring it to us.
Well, it's the Elite Eight. There might not be any real March Madness, but Mania Madness is still going strong. Now we got two matchups from WrestleMania 19. I think the Cinderella story that is Limp Bizkit's entrance with The Undertaker with the bike going up against Stone Cold's One Last Ride. Nothing too fancy with Stone Cold against Limp Bizkit. Keep on rolling, baby.
Oh, Steve Austin all day.
You know what? I'm still going to stay strong with Limp Bizkit. Do it for the memes. So I'm going to pick Undertaker. And you know, Phil, this time I'm actually doing it in my room. So I have some coins at my disposal. So I will flip the coin. But you can call it.
Tails never fails, baby.
Unless it's heads. And it's tails. So Stone Cold keeps on rolling, baby.
Absolutely. The Texas Rattlesnake. That walk down the aisle is still going strong.
Then we get Shawn Michaels' entrance from WrestleMania 25 because it's Hell Getting to Heaven going up against Triple H's entrance from WrestleMania 30, which we will talk about in a wee bit. Phillip, I have a feeling of where you're going, but just make it official.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time real fast? I apologize.
Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 25 going up against Triple H at WrestleMania 30.
Oh, Michaels all day. All day.
I will go with Triple H from WrestleMania 30. I think it's such a beautiful entrance.
God. Why are you doing this? Tails never fails. Let's do it again then.
All right, fine. And then it's Tails again. Son of a bitch.
I told you, dude. I told you. By the way, Charlotte's entrance from WrestleMania 34. Why wasn't this on the bracket?
Because I kind of forgot. You know, I went on the internet, I was looking at stuff, and then it didn't come up.
Randy Orton's entrance from WrestleMania 30, where Rev Theory plays voices live? Come on, dude. You just don't like them. Wow.
You know, I had to take some old school ones. You know, I had to put in some Macho King, some Warrior. I didn't want to just go completely new school. I had to throw some old school stuff in there. If this is, you know, the NCAA tournament, then those entrances are the NIT.
Absolutely. What else is next?
We continue on with Triple H. We got WrestleMania 22, which I think is maybe his best entrance, even though it's maybe his least talked about entrance, going up against another One Last Ride, Ric Flair from WrestleMania 24. I think we might agree on this one. I'm still going to go with Ric Flair from WrestleMania 24.
Woo! Nature Boy 24.
Then in the final matchup, we got Stone Cold from WrestleMania 13 with the glass shattering, taking on Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 12. I'm going to go with my boy Stone Cold. The glass shattering, iconic, seen in every single video package that involves him. Shawn Michaels also very iconic, but I'm going to go with my boy Stone Cold, and I think that means you're going to go with your boy Shawn Michaels, correct?
Absolutely.
All right, Phillip. Let's try this again.
Tails never fails.
But it's heads this time. You'll love to see it. Stone Cold, WrestleMania 34. So maybe next week we're going to do the...
Maybe next week we will do that.
And the...
Yep. All that is happening. All right, Brent.
Am I breaking up? Can you hear me?
You're breaking up pretty bad, man.
You know, it can't be my internet. My internet's just, you know, I got that fiber technology.
Oh wow!
I think it might be yours.
Well, let's hurry up and finish this podcast then. All right, Inside of the Ring, Takeover carries on. The Takeover matches that were supposed to happen the night before WrestleMania 36 will now start airing on April Fool's Day of next week on regular NXT programming. Brandon, you're the NXT guy. How do you like that?
I wish this was a regular Takeover event where there was a crowd and everything was, everything was pretty much the same. But unfortunately, that is not what's going to go down. I still haven't seen NXT yet, which is a shocker for me. I had to watch the Chris Benoit thing instead, but I have seen about some stuff. There's going to be an empty arena match or whatever, even though everything's an empty arena match at this point between Gargano and Ciampa, and that's the only match that's really confirmed besides the ladder match for the women. But, it's just kind of sign of the times. You got to make do with what you got.
Sign of the times, Harry Styles? Is that where you were going with that? I don't even know why I know that, to be honest with you.
I have never listened to Harry Styles in my life.
I don't even know why I know that, dude. I'm sorry. Anyway, WrestleMania was on ESPN this past week. Brandon, what were the ratings? How were those numbers?
Well, those ratings came in and they drew 800,000 viewers. It was the highest rated show of the weekend for ESPN. A good and a bad thing for WWE, I would say, just because there's no original programming, no live sporting events for ESPN. So normally, they draw 1 million, 2 million, whatever for a show or a basketball game or something that would be happening. So all across the board, ESPN's numbers have been down, but they outdrew UFC that aired right before them. It is similar to what the XFL was doing on ESPN, but the last game that was on ESPN, that was the worst rated game that was on ESPN ever. So, kind of good and bad. 839,000 is the official number. So you can kind of take from that what you will. I know for me, I watched the beginning, but then they ran to a commercial. I was like, screw this, I ain't watching no commercials. I'm just going to go to the network.
You said 839,000?
That is correct.
Almost 900,000 people. That's amazing.
It's closer to 800 than 900.
You have to round up. It's wrestling. You got to round up.
Well, in that case, you'd say it was like 2 million.
Oh, no, that's too far. That's too far. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this day in wrestling, the Hart Foundation make their WWF debut in 1985. ECW Ultimate Jeopardy, which is another name for War Games, 1994. Shane Douglas wins back the ECW Championship. And the final WCW Nitro was on this day 19 years ago. You have Sting versus Ric Flair and all this other amazing stuff. Not to mention, there was a SmackDown on this day last year where Charlotte beats Asuka to win the SmackDown Women's title to take it to the main event of WrestleMania 35. You have anything to say about all this stuff?
Not really.
Wow. What is this? Where are their attachments? Alright, fan mail. Who do you? There we go. Mates, with Mania being 2 nights, what matches do you put in the main event on both nights? Oh, wow. I think Edge Orton has to main event at least one of these nights, and then you do the due diligence and throw Brock and Drew on one night in the main event. I don't think you have Drew win though. I think you just have Brock beat him.
Yeah, this is definitely depends on what the finishes of the match is going to be. I'm leaning towards, they did kind of say that Drew and Brock was going to be on night 1, so I would say that would main event the first night. I don't know if they're going to go Raw one night, SmackDown the next night, but I wouldn't be shocked if maybe Shayna and Becky main event the second night, or main event the first night, and you have one woman's main event and then you have another men's main event. So maybe I'll say Shayna Becky main events the first night and then Brock and Drew main event the second night. I'm not exactly sure, but who knows?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I really don't know. We shall see. All right, Jack of all trades. Hey guys, what wrestling are you watching during this quarantine, and do you have any suggestions? Mine would be Nick Bockwinkel AWA, absolutely fantastic. Also any Adrian Adonis stuff. What a talent. I do need to watch a little bit more Nick Bockwinkel. I do. I've seen some Adrian Adonis stuff, and I was very impressed. I made a list, and should I just read it off, Brandon?
Go for it.
All right, WrestleMania 24, Flair versus Michaels. WrestleMania 25, the greatest wrestling match of all time. HBK versus The Undertaker. Great Muta versus Stone Cold Steve. Oh no, Stunning Steve Austin. G1 Climax 1992. Cody versus Dustin, Double or Nothing. WrestleMania 19, watch the whole show. Watch Beyond the Mat. And then Brett versus Austin, WrestleMania 13. Unbelievable. Yeah. Do you have a list, Brandon?
I do have a list. It's not as competent as yours with straight up matches, but I am trying to get into ECW. I started watching some stuff from 1995, kind of go week by week. I kind of like watching the week by week stuff, so if you haven't, go back and watch some of the Attitude Era stuff with Nitro after the turn of Hogan. For Raw, I'd probably start after Survivor Series, because that's definitely when the rise of Stone Cold starts. I'm also kind of thinking, maybe going back to this and kind of watching the stuff I watched as a kid with some fresh eyes. New Japan World, past like 7 years from that place if you have New Japan World. But another thing that I was thinking about is independentwrestling.tv. It is a complete place that you can go and get all these different wrestling indie promotions. They are on Google Play, Apple, Fire TV, Roku, Apple TV. And if you go to the website, they actually have 37 free videos, and a lot of them are David Starr versus Joey Janela. And you can, go and watch that stuff. There's a bunch of different stuff from GCW doing some great things on the indie scene. So if you don't want to watch some of the mainstream stuff, I would definitely recommend getting independentwrestling.tv and watch some of those events.
Absolutely. I have some non-wrestling stuff too. If you know me, you know I'm a big Scream guy. So Scream 1 through 4, you must watch it. Scream 2 and Scream 3 are on Netflix. If you're a real Scream fan like myself, you have all of them on DVD. But also the Scream television series that was on MTV in 2015. It ran its course up until last year. I just finished season 1. Unbelievable stuff. I have to start season 2. And then of course, it's a cult classic. Friday, the first Friday. Smokey, Debo, Craig, you gotta love it. You have to. Yes. But, yep.
On Netflix, I am on the Good Place kick right now. I've watched all 3 seasons. Then I couldn't wait for season 4 to come out, so then I broke down and bought season 4 on the YouTube. But I would highly recommend The Good Place. It's a smart comedy. I would say has Kristen Bell. Shout out Kristen Bell. And also on Netflix, another comedy, kind of a darker sense of humor, BoJack Horseman. They have the complete season. The last season just aired a couple months ago, so if you want, you can binge that. Tiger King, I've heard some absolutely fantastic things about that. I'm going to watch that probably this weekend. Some other stuff. I started watching the first season of American Horror Story. I love American Horror Story. That's some good stuff there. Yeah, so, maybe we can come back next week with some Netflix and other streaming options.
Really?
And Onward is going on Disney Plus, I think, like the first week of April. I watched it in the theaters. It's a good movie. Maybe not the best Pixar movie of all time, but it's a good movie. I'd recommend it.
Do you now?
Yeah, especially, I have a brother, so, it kind of hit me a little bit. It's kind of very similar to the Dustin Cody thing. Didn't get me as hard as that match did, but, similar feels.
Similar feels? Alright, I guess we'll move on. I guess we shall move on. In Brightest, they actually sent us quite a couple, so here we go. As my birthday approaches next week, I discovered a long time ago...
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to him. That I share a birthday with one Randall Keith Orton. Wow, look at that. You gotta love it. I was wondering if any pro grapplers share your B-days. Oh, wow, let me do a little Google search here.
Well, I just said, shout out Kristen Bell. I just found out that she has the same birthday as me, July 18th. Beautiful day in wrestling history, or in history in general.
Chris Canyon, wow. former United States champion.
Let's see if I can scroll all the way down. What can I find? I'm still in June. July. Let's see. Oh, yeah, I remember now. So, I got Robert Gibson, Al Snow, Joey Mercury, and Mandy.
You lucky SOB. Look at you. Look at you. Alright, moving on.
And July 17th, got Mojo Rawley.
There you go. What is one moment you...
Excalibur, July 16th. Happy birthday, Excalibur. Too bad he wasn't there.
Nah, of course. What is one moment you wish you saw in person? For me, it was Hogan's heel turn. For fans of my generation, that was and is still a huge moment in the history of the business. Oh my god. A moment that I... Oh, a moment. Brandon, you go.
So, being that I'm the big baseball fan, they do Starting Nine, which is the Barstool Baseball podcast. Every interview they do, they always ask basically the same question. If you can go into a hot tub time machine, where would you go back? So maybe on our next interviews, if we ever do an interview ever again, because this goddamn coronavirus, maybe we can ask some of our people those questions. But for me, I think I'm going to go more recent. I maybe would go CM Punk, Money in the Bank 2011, and then just doesn't really have to be a certain time and place, but sometime during the Attitude Era, a massive Stone Cold Steve Austin pop and just be a part of that.
Okay. For me, I think it would be. I think the Money in the Bank 2011 also, but for me, I think the Cow Palace, being in there to watch Eddie do his thing, man. Like, it's talked about so much, especially here because we live in the Bay Area, but I never got to see Eddie perform live in person. I only got to see him on TV, and that would have been something absolutely amazing for me. Or maybe even seeing Shawn wrestle in his prime and doing his thing, being in the arena for something like that. Just being a part of all these unbelievable moments. You know what I mean, man? I think that'd be really cool. All right. He also says, do either of you watch Asuka's YouTube channel? If not, I think you should. She's adorable, and she's just a big dork like the rest of us. I don't watch it. Actually, I was at a bar a few months ago, and it was on. So, technically, I've seen it.
I am a subscriber to Kana-chan TV. Great YouTube channel, definitely would recommend it. She has subtitles for everything. She pretty much speaks Japanese the entire time, but there are English subtitles. She's adorable. She posted a video yesterday or 2 days ago of just her basically dancing for 17 straight minutes. I wasn't paying attention to it, but it was kind of weird, but that is also... I have also watched the video of her, I don't even know what you call it, stringing cabbage or peeling cabbage for 15 straight minutes. So... And this was before the quarantine, so that just shows you what I do with my life.
Oh my god. Alright, and lastly, he says, really digging Jeff Hardy's new back piece tattoo. Yeah, Jeff is the master of tattoos, and it's taken up his whole back, and I quite enjoy it. Yep. Alright, now moving on, we're going to power through Monday Night Raw and AEW. We've been going pretty long here. We spent 20 minutes just talking about Benoit. So Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar were in the ring as Heyman cuts a promo discussing what's going to happen to Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania. What are your thoughts on the promo?
Good promo. I did like that they finally did the AEW setup of having the camera right on the ring entrance, because it is kind of weird seeing all those empty seats. Overall, good promo. Maybe not the best Heyman promo even in this feud with McIntyre, but it was good.
Alright, the phenomenal AJ Styles cuts a promo talking about how Undertaker's old, and they pull up a Tiger commercial he and Michelle McCool did. What are your thoughts on that?
AJ, the delivery and everything he's been doing has been great. I mean, his delivery and his, how he carries himself has been phenomenal, one might say. But I continue to not like what they're doing with the Undertaker. They're just completely... we'll say bury. Why not? Just completely burying the mystique of the dead man and the Undertaker, and it's kind of... I wonder, what is the reasoning behind this? Did the Undertaker do something to piss off Vince McMahon, and maybe something or another? But I continue to don't understand why they do this. There's no real positive out of this, especially if the Undertaker ends up beating AJ Styles in the end.
I mean, it's the simple case. Somebody's not taking the mystique of the Undertaker all that serious, so he's trying to humanize him as much as possible, and then he's going to feel the wrath of the dead man. It's just that simple.
Philip, what the hell is a boneyard match?
Oh, dude, that's another thing. Who was it? Sam Roberts had Peter Rosenberg on his show, and he went through this list of how you can make these matches feel more special since there's no crowd. And I think he alluded to something like that on his show. I'd have to go back and listen to it, dude. But that's interesting, you know. Kind of do stuff like Piper and Goldust Hollywood Backlot Brawl. You know, you could. He said, Charlotte and Rhea Ripley have a promo together, and Rhea Ripley could be like, "I'm trying to climb the ladder of success, and you're gonna have to climb a ladder too. It's gonna be a ladder match." Stuff like that would be great. You know, I think that'd be really interesting. Yeah, man, I'm kind of excited for a boneyard match, dude.
I'm kind of leaning to maybe like a graveyard match or something.
No, that's too corny. We can't do that. No.
But it's WWE.
Oh, okay. Look, AEW was pretty corny this week too. All right, but look, we're not gonna do that. Just fighting over tombstones and all this other stuff, dude. Maybe they should have a fight in the WWE warehouse and have a graveyard set up. Yeah, there we go. That'd be interesting. Yeah.
I am very intrigued in what they do with this WrestleMania because all the reports are that there are going to be a lot of pre-taped, kind of cinematic style matches, and I mean it's going to be something we've never seen before, Philip.
If the reports are right, WrestleMania is being taped right now as we speak.
And it might even be done with.
That's a possibility. Drew McIntyre could be the WWE champion right now, ladies and gentlemen.
And nobody even knows.
Nobody even knows, yes. Alright, Randy Orton cut an unbelievable promo, talks about how he loves Edge, talks about how Mick Foley passed the torch to him, talks about how Mick Foley threw him on some thumbtacks and he beat the hell out of him, and he took that torch from him, talks about he was handed everything, yeah. He became the Intercontinental Champion, became the youngest world champion in the company's history, and how if Triple H asked you to join a faction, you wouldn't do the same. Just beautiful. Love it.
Once again, Philip, I liked what Randy Orton did here. I thought it was a really good promo. I'm a little iffy on kind of the cutaways and as soon as he says something, they go to a video on that. But, I mean, I understand why they did that because of no live crowd and it just kind of adds a little extra something. But overall, I mean, this Edge-Orton feud, by far the best thing that has been going on during this WrestleMania season.
Yeah, man. And you know what? I was listening to Peter Rosenberg and he made me realize something. Look, it's okay that it's not in front of a live crowd. Edge already got the pop at the Rumble. He already got the pop. So this is okay. You know, no crowd's gonna make this even more intense. And I'm down for it, man. I really am. Next up, we have Angel Garza and the United States Champion Andrade defeat Cedric Alexander and Ricochet. There was a little hiccup with the pin count there, but the amazing spinning back elbow by Andrade to Cedric was absolutely amazing. Yeah. Angel and Andrade getting ready for that tag team title opportunity at WrestleMania.
Yeah, kind of a random match just because it kind of came out of nowhere. Maybe because of Rey Mysterio and his quarantine, but it was a good match. Maybe Andrade was a little stiff on that back elbow, but shout out Charlie. She's still smitten with Angel Garza.
I'm smitten with Charlie. Hello? Hello?
Yes, Philip?
I just want to make sure you were still there. Anyway, the Street Profits, they defeat Shane Thorne. Didn't know he was still with the company. And Brendan Vink. Oh, wow. Shane Thorne used to be a part of TM61 and the Mighty, but, Nick Miller went off to Japan. Is he still there, by the way? Do we know?
Sure, why not?
Sure, man. He's still there somewhere in the land of the rising sun. Profits beat these guys. Yep.
Yes, they did beat those guys.
Absolutely. All right. And then Shayna Baszler's being interviewed by Charlie Caruso. The man steps in, smacks her on the back with a chair. Yep.
Yeah, the Shayna Baszler promo part was alright. I think because of the setup, I think it did help that it was super dark. You couldn't really see anything besides her. Did help the empty arena setup. Another positive step with the Becky Shayna feud after just whatever they did with her biting and Becky coming out in the crown and the robe and whatever. But I mean, they're definitely making the right strides here, so I'm glad that they've corrected course after what happened 2 months ago.
Absolutely. And then last up, Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins have a promo inside the Performance Center. Kevin talks about how this is where he made his debut, and this building is, or he trained here, and this is special to him. And Seth's like, when I first got here, I wasn't here. I was in some winky-dinky warehouse. But the Performance Center wouldn't exist without me. NXT wouldn't be anything without me. You list all of his WrestleMania moments: the Universal title, the Intercontinental title, beating Triple H, cashing in Money in the Bank, and winning the WWE Championship right out here in the Bay Area. So we talked about all those moments, and yeah, man.
I actually really enjoyed this Seth Rollins promo. Once again, with no crowd, it definitely, he had the super serious feel to it. The crowd wasn't doing their stupid chants or any of the interactions, which obviously I'd rather there be a crowd there. But overall, I like this. I think I'm higher on it than most people. We finally kind of got, with the virus and having a very limited crew, he didn't have his goons with him, so it was just very straightforward. And this feud kind of feels like somewhat important. I would say it's still maybe not as hot as it was at the beginning of the year when they first started, but they're making the right strides, I would say.
Absolutely, all the strides. And let's talk about some teleportic strides with AEW Dynamite! So, we're not going to go in order of what happened on the show, but Chris Jericho, Le Champion, comes out to the ring and he makes the cameraman sing his theme song, and he has an interaction with a drone, Vanguard 1. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Jericho's doing the best that he can, because, he's Y2J. But then Damascus Hardy, Matthew Hardy, Broken Hardy, he appears at the top in the rafters, or not the rafters, but the empty seats, and he's teleporting down. That was corny as AF. That was corny as all hell, I'm not going to lie. AEW,
especially with Jericho moving his head.
Yeah, AEW, don't do that ever again, please. I know you're trying to be creative and do new things. Don't do that ever again. Don't do that ever again. Alright, anyway, and then we have the promo with Broken Matt and Jericho. He talks about how you may recognize my vessel, but I am Damascus. I'm over 3,000 years old, or something like that. And it was basically a lot of what he talked about on his podcast that he did with Chris after he debuted on Dynamite last week, which you need to go listen to that, because his explanation of Damascus and all these other vessels and how they're all intertwined with all the stuff that he did in TNA and the stuff he did with Bray Wyatt and Brother Nero and all this other stuff, how they're all intertwined. It's a fascinating listen. But what did you overall think of this?
Overall, I thought it was a good segment. I thought they were entertaining. I think it could have trimmed like a minute and a half off. I think it went a little bit too long, especially like when they were just kind of going back and forth, and it kind of felt like they were filling time. I'm with you, the kind of teleporting back and forth. It was kind of corny, but it's what Matt Hardy does, and I think it was more exposed because of Jericho, because you can see him with the cuts moving his head and his hair moving all over the place. But to be honest, when this Matt Hardy stuff first started, however many years ago it was, I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but I've definitely have come around to it. And when it comes to Matt Hardy and this kind of character, it always is kind of awkward introducing it because it is so different than anything else in wrestling. So it's kind of like awkward to introduce it. But then I think once you kind of get the feel and they get into this storyline and you get to understand what Matt Hardy's all about and you let him do what he's got to do, I think it gets a lot better. Just kind of introducing this kind of character in this environment is a little hard, so I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass.
Okay. Then Sammy Guevara comes out there and attacks him, and then Cody and Kenny come out there with chairs. They have the commentary team for this week along with Tony Schiavone.
I thought the commentary was good. Cody and Kenny were fine, I guess, but the Omega Guevara match, it was good. It was, kind of epic in length. It went on a long time. I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of having just a random title from outside the company hasn't really been introduced, really talked about at all. For the most part, just kind of being defended without any introduction. But it is kind of awkward to have this match in front of no crowd. I think the match would have been better with a crowd, but the wrestlers are still, I think, trying to get acclimated to how to wrestle in front of no crowd, because I think they're used to kind of taking a little bit of breaks and let the crowd kind of build the energy up. But then when you don't have the crowd and you're kind of selling and not really doing anything for 20 seconds, it is a little awkward.
Yeah, I wonder why the wrestlers weren't at ringside this time.
I think it was just because they had such a bare bones crew, so you couldn't really have 3 people, 5 people at ringside, so they just kind of stuck everyone in that trailer, which is kind of less safe, I would say, than having just the most spread out at ringside. But I don't know, I'm not a health expert.
Absolutely. All right, well, like we alluded to, Kenny Omega defeated Sammy Guevara to retain his AAA Mega Championship. It was a good match. It did go on a little bit in length. The Exalted One eats first. There is a oh god, this was a big shot at Vinnie Mac. So Brody Lee, the Exalted One, is in a suit eating a steak, and he sends somebody away for something, and then somebody else sneezes, and we all know the story. Vince hates sneezing. He absolutely hates it, so he kicks him out, sends him away. But what a shot at Vince, huh?
Yeah, I mean, he did that kind of in his first promo when he came back last week. I don't know if that's kind of the route you want to go down, just kind of having all these not-so-hidden shots at Vince every single week. It is kind of fun, but I think I hope Brody Lee just kind of has gotten it all out of his system, and he can kind of move on and be his own character.
Yeah, let's do that. He defeats QT Marshall with the discus lariat.
I was very happy with what happened in this match, especially with, I think QT had a match with Jake Hager a few weeks ago or before his match with Dustin, so I thought QT got too much offense against Jake Hager, but then I think he had the perfect amount of offense in this one, just making a little bit of a comeback, but Brody never really taking a bump, takes him out quickly and puts him over strong, so I thought this was the perfect way to introduce him.
Absolutely. All right, we have Cody Rhodes, the American Nightmare, defeating Jimmy Havoc.
And again, a good match. Just with Cody, his matches, as we kind of talk about, it's such crowd-oriented of getting Cody, getting the crowd behind him. So when Cody doesn't have that crowd behind him, I think he does suffer because he's not the phenomenal worker of athleticism and over-the-top moves. And Jimmy Havoc has never been a flippy-flop guy. He's much more of a hardcore specialist. So
a deathmatch guy.
A deathmatch guy. So these two going together in front of no crowd was a little bit awkward, but I thought it was good for what it was.
Absolutely. All right, the always eccentric Darby Allin defeats Superbad Kip Sabian, accompanied by the always gorgeous Penelope Ford.
Again, another good match. Maybe not pay-per-view quality, but I'm giving them passes right now because they are kind of feeling their way through this uncertain times.
Absolutely, and then next up we have the Big Hurt, Jake Hager, defeating Chico Adams, and then the AEW World Champion, Jon Moxley, comes out there, hits him with a paradigm shift, but that wasn't enough. Hager quickly applies the ankle lock, and Mox gets out of that, and Hager gets out of sight.
Not the biggest fan of Hager not really selling the paradigm shift because it has been, sold so much lately. And it seems as though we're going towards Jake Hager and Jon Moxley. They were really good friends going back to WWE, so I think Moxley and Hager are going to be motivated to put on a good show. Who knows when this will happen? If Double or Nothing takes place, I would assume this would be the match that they would do for the title. But then I think it's just kind of the WWE stink on it, to be honest, that this just doesn't feel like an AEW World Title main event match.
No, it doesn't. It feels like maybe a TV title match at best.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine if they just have a match on Dynamite for the title, or just a one-on-one non-title match.
Yeah, that's okay. Would you say this episode of Dynamite was more awkward than last week?
I definitely would say that this was a step down from last week. As I said, they had such a bare-bones crew, no Taz, no Jim Ross, and they didn't have the wrestlers at ringside. We didn't talk about the Jake the Snake interview or promo. I thought it was good. It wasn't as good as his other stuff that he's been doing, but I mean, right now, AEW and WWE are kind of navigating of what's going on, and I liked that they had the wrestlers at ringside. That was one of the big things I liked about it, because you still had kind of the feel of a crowd, but You just don't really know. They hint at having a show next week, but they just say next Dynamite because you never know what's going to be happening tomorrow, let alone next week.
Absolutely. All right, Brandon, who is your superstar spotlight?
My superstar spotlight, I will go with Chris Jericho. I thought he had a good interaction with Matt Hardy and the stuff that he did on Dark Side of the Ring with the Chris Benoit documentary. So overall, I'll go with the former Le Champion.
Absolutely. I will go with Jericho as well. He just posted on his Instagram he's having trouble with an appliance, and he's like, it's probably related to Vanguard 1, that stupid idiot. Just stuff like that. Jericho, the Reverend of Reinvention, constantly just changing the game with whatever character he's doing. I'll go Jericho as well. Brandon, tell us about our promo pick of the week.
Well, this week's promo pick has to go back all the way to January 26, 2015, when Raw had no fans. But it wasn't because of a virus. It was because of a snow-in. I think it was in Philadelphia, somewhere in the East Coast. And this was the night after the Royal Rumble. Roman Reigns wins. Everyone's booing. And they have a sit-down interview between Roman and Lesnar. And they come face-to-face. It was good. And this was also kind of infamous for having Roman, not on this interview, but the interview prior on the same episode, where you could clearly hear somebody talking in Roman's ear.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember this episode very fondly. It was interesting. It was new. It was different. I had never seen anything like it. But moving on to our closing match pick of the week, it is a WrestleMania match because it's WrestleMania season, ladies and gentlemen. And ironically, it is Chris Benoit versus Montel Vontavious Porter, MVP for the United States Championship, WrestleMania 23, April 1st, 2007. This is Benoit's last WrestleMania match. This is MVP's first WrestleMania match. And who would have thought months later that the unbelievable tragedy would have happened? This match went about 9 minutes and 57 seconds. It was a solid match. Benoit wins with that dangerous diving headbutt. And yeah, man, it was a solid ring work by both men.
Yeah, just a simple, short, mid-card Mania match. And pretty much what you would expect from these two guys. Well worked.
Yeah. I mean, WrestleMania 23, guess how many matches had on it, Brandon?
I'm going to say 9, because it was the good old days where WrestleMania wasn't 10 hours long.
Right on the head. It was 9 matches.
Boom, you love to see it.
The longest match was the main event. It went 30 minutes. The Money in the Bank went like 24 minutes. Yeah. Watch back WrestleMania 23, guys. It was a really good show. Really, really solid good show. I liked it. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for us. Follow us on Twitter at Bulletcast, Instagram, The Bulletcast, YouTube channel, The Bulletcast. Please email us, Bulletcast2 is the number 2, sweet SWET at gmail.com. 99.9 FM K in Watsonville every Friday night from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. if we ever get back on the air. iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Spotify, and Patreon. We're all over the damn place. Next week, we do our predictions for the most important WrestleMania of all time, WrestleMania 36, the two-night spectacular, hosted by Rob Gronkowski, with no fans. Bulletcast title, it is on the line. Brandon could become a 9-time champion with no fans in attendance. You love to see it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We will talk to you next time.
No matter how hard I fall, I'll get back up on my feet. Red alert, this is gonna...
This has been the Bulletcast. Thank you for listening.